Hello everyone, this is Refresh, and I am here to take a look at Magic the Gathering's Chandra Planeswalker deck from Dominaria. According to the back, it says it's Chandra Bold Pyromancer. Chandra is an expert pyromancer. Use her flames to incinerate the opposition before finishing them with massive creatures. You get a deck box, a 60-card deck featuring one premium card, two 15-card Dominaria booster packs, plus a strategy insert and a magic quick reference card. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside. Here's our Chandra Bold Pyromancer card, a little shiny and a little bent as usual. It's our deck box with some angry Chandra art on the front. Inside we have our two booster packs. We have our quick reference guide. And as you can see, this goes all the way back to Kaladesh. This is a quick guide to let you know how to read a spell cost, what the mana is, what the different types of cards are, a little bit about how to set up the game, how to win, and then all the many phases of playing Magic. It's not that useful for beginners if you don't have somebody to teach you, because this is not enough to learn the game, but it is, I suppose, a decent reference if you already kind of know how to play the game and you just need some reminders what you're supposed to do every phase. Here's our strategy insert. We have a little bit of information about Chandra here, not much. It's like 2 sentences. And then in big text, it gives you the warning to play with the deck before you open the booster packs. And then it tells you a little bit about how to play the deck. There is some interesting jargon, like burn spells here, which I think if you're a new player, you won't quite understand what that means right away. But it is a somewhat general explanation of what this deck is trying to do, so I appreciate that. I wish it actually had a full deck tech, but I'm glad that it's not the most generic statement of, hey, play Magic like this. There is a link to how to use Planeswalker cards here. You gotta type this into your URL bar. That is a lot to type. So I kind of wish that this were just bigger and they would tell you all that. And then it tells you some of the card mechanics that you're gonna find in the deck. And that's good. I'm glad that it has this information right here. The back is just ads, and so that's too bad. You know, you could have put a lot more information that's missing from here onto here. And I think the one thing that you really wanted to do with a product like this is to provide a deck tech to let you know what all the cards are and how they're supposed to function in your deck. Let's take a look at the cards. Our tutor rare is Chandra's Outburst. It costs 5 mana for a sorcery and it deals 4 damage to a target player or planeswalker, and then you look for Chandra from your graveyard or your library and bring it back into your hand. There's the second one, as usual. We also have Marwyn the Nurturer, which is kind of an interesting addition as another rare. She is an elf lord of sorts, as whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwyn the Nurturer, and then you tap her to add green to Marwyn's power. So I'm guessing this is some sort of rampy style deck, which means that there's going to be a lot of elves here, which is kind of interesting for Chandra to be associated with, but there's that. Then we have Gilded Lotus, which is just a big mana producer. It looks like Chandra's common is called Pyromantic Pilgrim. For 3 mana, you get a creature, human wizard, that has haste and is a 3/1. There's 4 of those. Characteristically, I guess that makes sense for who Chandra is, but I would imagine that, you know, a burn spell would be more appropriate. Chandra's uncommon is a 4 mana Karplusan Hound. It's a creature that's a hound, and whenever Karplusan Hound attacks, if you control a Chandra Planeswalker, this creature deals 2 damage to any target. It's a 3/3. I very much think that this is an excellent card for Chandra. And that's the deck. Let's see how it plays and I'll be right back. So I got to play with this deck a bit, and I have some thoughts. The first thing that's really obvious from the deck composition here is that this is a ramp deck, and it's a ramp deck that uses the kicker mechanic, and so those are the kind of the 2 focuses of this deck. Chandra herself feeds into this plan by adding ramp herself if you do manage to play it, and she does a little extra damage on top of that, but she can also be used as removal, which is nice. The deck contains a good number of removal cards in Fire Intervention, Fight with Fire, she even fires, and then optionally the Pierce of Sky can be used to remove some flying creatures as well. But with most of the focus being on ramp, I do appreciate that this deck actually contains these Elfhame Druids and the Llanowar Elves. I do kind of wish the deck had a little bit more in the way of payoffs for ramp, and I don't know if Marwyn the Nurturer is necessarily the best rare to have in this deck, and the Gilded Lotus. I mean, both of those rares also point towards ramp, but the payoffs include Bailout Gorgers, which can get bigger, Grund the Lonely King, and Fight with Fire, and the Achievement Fire is being able to be kicked as well to do more damage to opposing creatures. That is about it. One thing I wish that this deck had a little bit more of are big payoffs for going ramping. Like, the Fire Elementals are not especially that impressive. Even if you're able to ramp into them, it's not like you can get any sort of kicker effect with them, and so having 3 of them is kind of weird in this deck. I would imagine that maybe 1 would be more sufficient, and then having another creature that can sort of show off what you can do with kicker or ramp would be nice, including another Primordial Worm perhaps. The Gaia's Protector is also kind of a weird fit as well, and again, I think this would have been a lot more fun of a deck if it showed off the kicker mechanic or the things that you can ramp into that are insane a little bit more. Grund the Lonely King is a very nice thing to ramp into, and so is Chandra Bold Pyromancer. Her rare, however, only does direct damage to a player or planeswalker before searching out Chandra, and it costs 5 mana for that privilege, and so I'm not especially in love with her rare as a spell. Like, the fact that it does staple on a tutor for her is nice, but 4 damage directly to the face is not always going to be the kind of thing that you want, and may end up being a dead card a lot of times because you kind of wish that it would be doing something else. That said, because it tutors up Chandra, it's okay, but it's certainly not one of my favorite Planeswalker tutors ever. But I think this deck does mostly work pretty well towards its plan of showing off ramp and having Chandra play with the themes of the deck, and so if this were not a Chandra deck, but it were a Jaya deck, I'd be really on board with what's going on here. The flavor miss of having Chandra when she's not actually in the set is kind of disappointing, especially when there's another red Planeswalker that would have easily just filled this position without any problem and who was in the set. But I think the deck functions well. It's fun for what it's trying to do. Again, I wish there were at least a couple more payoffs to make it really feel like you're getting something for all the ramp work that you're doing. But not a bad deck. If you are interested in ramp, you can go ahead and pick this deck up. Let me know what you thought about the deck yourself. And if you found this video helpful, hit the like button if you'd like to see more such videos. Hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.